Today we have you with us here at Geneva Internet Platform here in Geneva, and online community. We had quite a big interest for the briefing with 130 registrations, and we will have also Vlada Radunovic, whom you know. He will be accessing online and he will be commenting on the issues of his specialization, mainly cybersecurity and net neutrality. Okay, here is the plan for today. We will start with quick reflections on 2014, and then we will move to 2015 predictions and what developments can we expect, what developments happened in January 2015 and what we can expect in February. Now, we have a relatively easier task today, unlike other colleagues who were doing crystal ball exercise since the beginning of the year. We have behind us the whole month of January and quite a few developments. And behind us we have also World Economic Forum in Davos, which usually settles some trends and issues in the global policy. Okay, we will be now moving on. What is always useful to see is the context in doing these predictions. We have been doing it for the last 3 years, and here are some previous weather forecasts. As you can see, we had more sun in 2013, in 2014. Now for 2015 we expect some fresh winds and hopefully in 2016 sunnier weather after this unsettled and delicate negotiations in 2015. When it comes to predictions, it is interesting to see how the issues evolved over the last 3 years, starting from the 2012, when we had the human rights quite high on the agenda, and human rights, in particular freedom of expression. If you can recall, at that time there was a Swedish resolution and the first resolution on the human rights issues and the internet. In 2013 it was more related to global IG architecture, and also question of the global IG architecture remained prominent in 2014. We can also see how our predictions from 2014, what happened last year. The question of the global IG architecture was high on diplomatic agenda, mainly through the Net Mundial initiative. But we had a few unknowns and a few surprises, positive surprises. One was the announcement of IANA Transition, which featured quite high on the diplomatic agenda last year. Online privacy and data protection, as it was expected, was prominent. Net neutrality came more into the focus, although it wasn't a new issue in 2014, but it came more into the focus of the global policy processes. We did a quick survey in January with our community, asking what were the main events, issues, and the personalities in 2014, and we had 130, 140 replies. And as you can see, the most important event according to this survey was Net Mundial. It is expected. The most prominent issue was IANA Transition, and the most prominent personality was Fadi Shehadi with 31.3% of votes, followed by Edward Snowden, 15.4%. Well, we usually use this framework introduced by former US Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, indicating the 3 aspects of any prediction. First, known knowns, what we know with quite a high certainty that will happen. Then there are known unknowns, things we know that we do not know how they will develop, and thirdly, unknown unknowns. Therefore, our discussion today will be centered around these 3 sets of issues. Firstly, we won't focus in details on known knowns, the process of the IG process. There are quite a few good blogs by Wolfgang and the other colleagues who outline the main activities. You can also consult the timeline, Internet governance timeline, with a detailed survey of various processes, as you can see, divided into IANA Transition and ICANN process, versus and UN processes, and other processes and events. Those are more or less set elements of the Internet governance in 2015. With the timetable is ready, and we know what will be happening. We will now move to known unknowns, issue that we are aware that will be tackled in 2015, but it is very difficult to predict how they will be addressed. We will outline some options, and we indicated 7 Internet governance issues. Now, I'm sure that it will open an interesting debate. Some of colleagues, for example, argue that we should have included Bitcoin as an important issue, which is missing in our current list of the key Internet governance issues. And here is the easiest part of our exercise. Could we go to the previous one? Was the cybersecurity. As you know, the cybersecurity already featured highly on the policy agenda in January, and it featured in 3 ways. First is cybersecurity of the Internet therefore protection of the Internet, mainly critical infrastructure. Cybersecurity on the Internet, the question of cybercrime, and cybersecurity, we couldn't find a better term, but we call it by the Internet. Therefore, use of the Internet, for example, misuse of the Internet by terrorists for organizing their attacks and running their networks, recruitment, and other details. And as you can recall from the latest developments, in particular, after the Paris attack, the third element, cybersecurity by the Internet, came in the sharper focus on the global policy agenda. Therefore, cybersecurity is, in our prediction, is going to be the main issue in Internet governance in 2015. The next issue is the question of the global IG architecture. We predict that it will be slightly less important than the cybersecurity, comparing to developments in 2014, when it had global IG architecture had a prominent position, mainly around discussion about Net Mundial. And here are the few key points and a few key elements which will probably shape the global IG architecture in 2015. The first one is it is now more or less adopted that offline rules apply online. It is clear in the clearly adopted and codified in the field of human rights. Second point, which was introduced by US cyber space strategy, and it is now again supported in many bodies, is that international law applies to the Internet. Therefore, existing rules of the international law applies to the Internet. Third important point is the link to the negotiation on UN Sustainable Development Goals. It is still an ambiguous process, and the Internet features in according to our analysis, 4 specific Sustainable Development Goals out of 17, although it influences more or less the complete agenda. Fourth point, which will influence discussion on Internet governance architecture, is the question of the versus plus 10 and extension of the IGF mandate. As you know, the process negotiation will be happening throughout the year, and in December 2015, some sort of conclusion should be made. One consequence of the, for example, element that international law applies to the Internet and offline rules applies online is that there will be need to strengthen existing bodies that deal with traditional policy issue to address cyber aspects of those issues. For example, when we speak about cybercrime, there is a UNODC in Vienna which deals with a crime and organized crime, and it is in the framework of this application of offline rules, it's very likely that UNODC will play a more prominent role. Or next to us is the WTO, which deals with the trade issues. Therefore, we can expect as one of the building blocks in the internet governance processes that existing bodies, international organizations, and other governance bodies will get more prominent role in covering cyber-related issues. Now, one of the main challenges in finalizing this building is how to ensure the coordination, how to ensure that, for example, data protection and online privacy is covered in comprehensive and transversal way by taking into consideration what is going on in the WTO when they discuss the question of data as an important element of trade, also in the UN Human Rights Council, ITU, ISO, IETF, various standardization bodies. That element of coordination will reflect in a few minutes, will be probably one of the major challenges. I have to coordinate better because we have online community following me, but this is the only way to coordinate. Here is one challenging suggestion. What could be the possible building blocks which may shape the possible compromise throughout the 2015? As we know, there are different views, generally speaking, and this is simplification, I hope not oversimplification, arguing for non-governmental or intergovernmental approach to internet governance. And possible building blocks and elements could be definitely global and multi-stakeholder ICANN, specialized international organizations dealing with the internet aspects of traditional policy issues, therefore strengthening of role of the WTO, WIPO, UNODC, and other players, and coordination among different IG processes by a multi-stakeholder body with UN legitimacy. Those are some ideas that could be further discussed and considered as possible building blocks for compromise in 2015. The third, therefore, we have cybersecurity, we have architecture. The third issue in this list is IANA Transition. As you know, I guess quite a few of you are involved somehow in the process or in IANA Transition. For those of you who are new to this issue, this is the follow-up to the announcement of the US government to relinquish supervising role over the ICANN announcement of the NTIA back in March 2013, which was considered as one of the major developments, 14, last year. Well, that announcement initiated the process. It is a very complex process with many uncertainties and many open issues. One of the key issues is how to achieve accountability of the new global body that should take care of IANA function. And there is obviously the question, given some signals coming from Washington, what if the transition is not effective on 30th September 2015, as it is indicated in the NTA statement and announcement? They would like to complete the process of negotiation and to introduce a new setup on the 1st of October 2015. There are many views and there are many indications that this process may take longer, but one has to see what will be the consequence of the fact that it will be prolonged. Next issue in our list is the question on online privacy and data protection. Some can argue that it is too low on the priority list, on the importance list. Comes after cybersecurity, architecture, IANA transition. One of the major developments will be March meeting of UN Human Rights Council, which may consider introduction of the special rapporteur on online privacy. There are some indications from the human rights community that during the March meeting of UN Human Rights Council, the special rapporteur position will be introduced as a follow-up to the Brazil-Germany initiative, which started after the Snowden revelation, if you can recall. The other development, which is less visible, but potentially, especially if it is successfully concluded, development with a high impact is the, I call it second life, for the Safe Harbor Agreement. Safe Harbor Agreement, if you can recall, is the agreement between United States and the European Union, some other countries, which basically should ensure that the data of European citizens are protected on servers in the United States according to the European Union law. As we know, safe harbor agreement so far hasn't been particularly successful, and there are serious efforts to renegotiate it and possible to have it as one of the way outs from the current impasse on the question of online privacy and data protection. And I think that towards the end of May and in June, we'll have the first news about if there is any breakthrough. The key challenge is that European law has to apply somehow on data which are physically stored on clouds in the United States, physically located in the United States. According for the US law, it is not possible, obviously, to adjust specifically their legislation to the requirements of European Union. Therefore, Safe Harbor Agreement was designed as some sort of private-public partnership in order to ensure the higher level of privacy protection for data of European citizens which are stored in the United States. Well, the question of net neutrality is fifth on our list, and with a few major developments. Vote of the U.S. Federal Communication Commission at the end of February on the question of net neutrality in the United States. This is the major issue, and the United States being the key player and the host of most of the key companies in the field of the internet will influence discussion on net neutrality. Less relevant but still important is the EU net neutrality policy discussed between government and the Council, and the current presidency, Latvia's presidency, will have a prominent role. And there will be obviously the question how net neutrality is addressed on the global level. Do we need the rules on net neutrality on global level? How to ensure that traffic is treated on internationally as it should be if net neutrality is adopted in the United States and Europe. Sixth question is, well, the Shapat cartoon on the question of jurisdiction and anchoring internet governance in existing law. Again, it is related to these premises that we introduced. Offline equal online when it comes to regulation, application of international law. Now, the question is how existing law can be applied. What is do we need to revisit offline mechanism and apply them online? What is the question of jurisdiction on the internet? And the seventh in our list well, here is my favorite photo on jurisdiction and anchoring in internet governance in existing law. This is a photo, users, mainly migrants in Djibouti, trying to pick up a cheaper signal for neighboring Somaliland. As you can see, they're somewhere by the sea, and since signal is strong, they are trying to use internet service providers from Somaliland instead of Djibouti. And this is interesting, quite visual representation of challenge of the jurisdiction and the territorial regulation of telecommunications. We have, as a seventh development, is the question of ICANN and new domains. As you know, this has been a major issue, particularly around a few issues like .amazon, .vine, and the other specific issue. That will remain as important issue on global agenda. We'll have therefore, when we analyze those known unknowns, there are probably three which are the most important. The first one is will the IANA transition happen on 30th September 2015? Therefore, is the internet community and other players, are they going to be ready for IANA transition? The second issue related to high level of cybersecurity is will securitization of IG strengthen an intergovernmental approach in this field? Because security by definition, although it requires the public-private partnership, it is by definition the responsibility of governments in traditional scheme. Therefore, the question is the high relevance of cybersecurity issues going to tilt this balance more towards intergovernmental approach to internet governance. And then the last question is, how will WSIS plus 10 contribute to broadly accepted IG formulas? Are the processes that are leading towards the December meeting on WSIS plus 10 going to contribute to possible compromise among different views on internet governance? Means, will there be any continuation of the function of IGF, or possible indication about introduction of some sort of coordinating body in the field of internet governance? Well, we will definitely expect quite a few unknowns, and I'm sure that, like we had a surprise in 2013 with Mr. Snowden, in 2014 with the NTI announcement of the transition, we'll definitely have something. The world is in such flux that there will be some positive, negative surprises in 2015, which will definitely influence the agenda and discussion. This is basically the first part of today's briefing, focusing on 2014 and the major developments in 2015. And now I will invite Vlada. It is a part of our series on the monthly briefings. I will invite Vlada to comment quickly and open the floor for your questions before we move to the reflections on development in January 2015, which will organize as some sort of IG barometer. Vlada.
Thank you, Jovan. Thank you for the excellent overview. Hello to all of you in Geneva and all of you online from somewhat snowy Belgrade. There is an interesting discussion going on at this moment in the online space, and I'll reflect briefly on that later on when we call for more questions. But I just wanted to provide two short reflections on the two topics that you mentioned. One is with regards to net neutrality. You mentioned that there is still ongoing debate in the US, and we have seen a lot of political influence to this debate. On one hand, President Obama himself coming back to the issue of net neutrality just after the political loss in the recent elections for Congress, and then so it is in a way politicized as well. And then we've seen the recent article from the Ambassador Sepulveda in a way confirming the US direction towards the protection of net neutrality. You correctly pointed that we're expecting the FCC voting or discussion on possible measures to protect net neutrality. But one thing that I wanted to maybe briefly comment is, why is this relevant to non-US and to all of us, even beyond the scope of discussions about net neutrality? To some extent, possible change in relation between the US government and regulators in the first place and the corporate sector, in this case telecom providers, in a way imposing net neutrality or certain public interest issues into the work of telecoms would signal that, at least for a lot of people from civil society, that if the corporate sector, and in this sense telecom providers, are opting for multi-stakeholder model on a global level, and if it is to become a model where both corporate sector and civil society and government should work on shaping the internet, then corporate sector needs to take care more closely about public interests and not only its own interests in sense of the revenue. So this kind of change would probably have or be a clear signal, more than just net neutrality, into the roles and responsibilities of actors when it comes to multi-stakeholder model for protecting public interests. The second brief comment relates to the cybersecurity. Just maybe a glance over a number of initiatives which are emerging when it comes to cybersecurity. You correctly pointed that the international peace and security aspect of cyberspace is now emerging, which includes the implementation of international application of international law in cyberspace. There is a bigger and bigger consensus, even within the governmental group of experts of the UN, including Russia and other delegates, that in a way agreed in their last report from 2013 and 14 that the international humanitarian law applies to cyberspace. There are a lot of things which are not clear yet, especially when it comes to specific aspects of cyberspace, like the attribution and other things. But it seems like there are more and more initiatives, including like in the OSCE, discussing the confidence building measures, cooperation, sharing of information between the states, and in a way preparing also the level of diplomats to better understand cybersecurity risks and possible reaction on eventual incidents, which is definitely a signal, as it was also in Davos, that cybersecurity is moving from the level of engineers, technicians, IT departments, and so on, to the level of leaders of companies, corporate sector, and states. I will stop there, and of course, can get back to these questions later on. Thank you.
Thanks. Let me just comment on two points. I attended the Davos meeting, not the main of Davos, some sort of consultations, and it's clear that 2 points were coming clearly from Davos. One is that cybersecurity is the key issue, and second is the indication that internet should be considered as a global public resource, not yet good, global public resource. It was echoing element in many presentations in Davos. Therefore, those are two major developments coming from the business sector after the meeting in Davos. I would like just to open the floor for a few comments, quick comments on the therefore 2050 general view and general prediction what may happen. Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. Richard is the first to intervene.
Hi, Richard Hill. I just wanted to verbalize something that Vlad has posted on the chat list, which is that there is a new unknown, and it may bring a new wind of change. A fairly large group of civil society organizations, including some in the U.S. who have not been very active in internet governance, is forming an internet social forum, which is basically based on the World Social Forum. And the call is to occupy the internet. And that is not a multi-stakeholder effort. That is a non-profit society effort only. And so this could bring a fresh view and fits right into the trends you were saying. Broaden the debate, recognize these are policy issues, these are not technical issues. And in response to the social corporate responsibility issue, no, we cannot trust companies to voluntarily work in the public interest. They need rules and some constraints in order to do that. So that's just getting off the ground. It's already attracted quite some attention, and we'll wait and see what happens with that.
Thank you, Richard. Well, if you don't have any other comment, we can continue discussion after the introduction of IG barometer. Therefore, what we did so far, focus on 2014, predicted the major developments in 2015, and now we will zoom in on what happened in January 2015, introducing the concept of IG barometer, which will be on the screen shortly. As you can see, here are the major. We'll do the better graphics for the next version, but we are trying now to follow those 7 major areas of internet governance and analyze the monthly developments. IG barometer is basically indicates the presence of specific IG issue in the public policy debate comparing to the previous month. It doesn't mean that that issue is generally more important or more relevant, but it is basically comparing to the previous month. And as you can see in barometer for January 2015 on the question of cybersecurity, there was a high raise in the prominence of cybersecurity, with the first cyber trigger sanctions after the Sony attack by United States. Therefore, those are first international sanctions, traditional sanctions, which were triggered by cyber incident, which is small historical development. Then cybersecurity was the only digital related issues which featured in President Obama's State of the Union address last week. It was clearly highlighted as a priority for the United States. And we have then policy reaction on Charlie Hebdo attack, mainly by French, but also other authorities requiring more cybersecurity, what we call by the internet, or preventing that the internet is used or misused by, in this case, terrorist organization for attacks. And then the last reason why we put the cybersecurity high on the IG barometer is the high presence during the WEF, World Economic Forum meeting in Davos. When it comes to the second global IG architecture, there were no major developments comparing to the December 2014, because in 2014, you may recall that there were a lot of dynamics about the question of Net Mundial, Organization Coordination Council, that it was quite a prominent issue. What happened at the very beginning, on the 1st of January 2015, was entry into the force of the 2012 International Telecommunication Regulation. And if you can recall what happened in Dubai in December 2012, there were countries that signed in ITRs and countries that didn't sign. Therefore, it creates not yet dramatic, but it creates some sort of instability in the global digital infrastructure. And there was the establishment of what Richard mentioned, of the Internet Social Forum, aimed at gathering NGOs, civil society, to address mainly the issues of social justice and other related issues. It was announced during the World Economic Forum in Davos. When it comes to IANA transition, we didn't have the major developments. There was a transition accountability group meeting in Frankfurt and a lot of discussions on the mailing list. But we are preparing, as you will see, for much busier February developments when it comes to IANA transition. On online privacy and data protection, our observatory didn't detect any major development. There were some moves and announcements in the European Union by the new Commission, but no major developments. Net neutrality, Vice President of European Commission and Commissioner for Digital Market indicated support for the principle of net neutrality. On jurisdiction, there was very, very low visibility and almost no presence of jurisdiction in the discussion during the month of January. And on the question of ICANN and new domains, there were no major developments, at least not in the public space. We are here referring to developments related to international meetings or discussion in public space, including media coverage. This is more or less barometer for January 2015, the start of the year. And again, high relevance of cybersecurity, and more or less people are probably still sleepy after the holidays and waiting for February, when, as you will see, developments will gain more momentum. When it comes to cybersecurity, probably the major development will be Global Security Summit in Washington, D.C., which was a follow-up and a reaction to the Paris attack. It will be hosted on 18th February 2015, and according to some announcements, cybersecurity will play a prominent role. There are no any indication about any major development in global IG architecture. Net Mundial first coordination meeting will be in March, and it will be relatively quiet month, at least based on the current predictions. IANA transition is going to come into the focus, because the ICANN will host the next 52nd meeting in Singapore between 8th and 12th of February, and we expect that there will be first draft or first proposal of how the transition should be affected. It should be presented during the next meeting of ICANN in Singapore. Therefore, we can expect a lot of discussion and dynamism around this announcement. On online privacy and data protection, we can expect policy build-up for the UN Human Rights Council and decision on the special rapporteur for online privacy. The Human Rights Council will take place in March 2015, but we can expect a lot of policy dynamism, negotiation preparations during the next month. Big issue, and probably it will raise in the relevance, definitely in the public space and media, will be the result of the vote of the U.S. Federal Communication Commission on net neutrality, which is scheduled for 26 February 2015. It is going to be most likely one of the major developments, especially in the United States, but with the global impact. They have to decide what they are going to do with the question of net neutrality. There are different issues on the table, but this is going to be one of the major developments. On jurisdiction, we don't expect, at least based on the current developments, we don't expect any major events. And on ICANN and New Domains, there will be discussions, and especially about the controversial domain names during the next meeting in Singapore. This is more or less the barometer with the January developments and the developments that we can expect in the February, preparing in a way for the busy spring. Later on, there will be in March UN Human Rights Council. There will be meeting the Hague Conference on cyberspace in April, and a series of different meetings, Freedom Coalition meeting in Ulaanbaatar, and you can find the list of those events, known knowns, in our timeline for 2015. Well, that's more or less all. We introduced the weather forecast and the barometer, influenced by our colleagues here in the building. We have some questions or comments from the online space.
Welcome from the online community. We have a couple of questions. We have 43 participants and the discussion has already started. Maybe one question, it's a clarification question from Nadira Alaraj. She's asking us to elaborate on the European cloud computing data and their hosts in the US. In particular, whether they refer to application data like Google, Facebook, and the like, or whether it covers other types of data like bank data. And we have another question from João Caribe from Brazil. What about the business models that threaten net neutrality as data cap or zero rating?
Vlada, would you like to take any comments on this question or any other question before we move to further discussion?
Thank you, Jovan. Yes.
Okay. On the question of data and cloud computing, you can see the multidisciplinarity of internet governance issues. The key question and the key context, historical context, was the Snowden revelation, and the question if the countries should have their data or their citizens hosted within their national territories. And there were quite a few proposals from Brazil, from some European Union officials, including at one point Prime Minister Merkel, on the need to host the physically data on servers within the national territory, on the case of the European Union within the European Union. Now, on that point, and we can go into the details on discussion within the European Union, but one zoom out view is basically that there are two possibilities. Either there will be international regulation which will protect the data and the online privacy according to the agreed rules, including enforcement mechanisms, or as a possible failure to reach that international agreement, there could be I won't use the term balkanization. There will be fragmentation or localization of data with the request of more and more governments to host their data locally. There was some sort of hint last year that Brazil may request it with Marco Civil Act. I think there is a Russian law introducing the requirements for the social media operators to have their data hosted on Russian territory as of 1st of September, and that's basically the balancing act. Will it be some sort of international regulation and international role which will ensure the required protection? And the European Union is in a quite delicate position because it has a quite high standard of protection of online privacy, and it has in the same time a considerable quantity of volume of data hosted outside the European Union. European Parliament is discussing it. There is discussion of cloud computing. There are different views. Some interpretation, especially in the last issue, Davos issue on Financial Times, argued even that European Union will try to protect their nascent industry, digital industry, through the standardization, which is a well-known economic way of introducing some sort of protective space for the development of the young industries. Therefore, Financial Times argued that the European Union is trying, basically through data protection regulation, to give more space for their local internet industry to grow and to reduce dependence on the Silicon Valley, which is in the case, for example, of mobile search in Europe, almost 90%. Roxana, I didn't get the second question, and it's quite specific and technical.
Yes, the second question from Joao was referring to the business models that threaten net neutrality, such as data cap and zero rating. If you want us to elaborate on this.
I will pass the floor to Vlada, who is a specialist for net neutrality. Vlada.
Thank you. Thank you, Jovan. Just a brief comment that I basically also mentioned in the chat. It is that there is a debate, a discussion. It was also present during the IGF last year, where the main session was on net neutrality, whether things like data caps, zero rating should be within net neutrality discussion. I had a feeling that some of the telcos were, to some extent, even fed up with bringing more issues to net neutrality. On the other hand, civil society activists and user communities were concerned whether this is also something to be discussed. Neelie Kroes, former commissioner of the European Commission, in one of the blogs before she left the position, or maybe it was even a little bit after, sent a message that she doesn't see zero rating as an issue for net neutrality. And for those that might not follow, zero rating is if a telecom provider gives you free access to, let's say, Facebook for a month, but it doesn't give you free access to Wikipedia or other things. So, you know, it's a kind of a positive discrimination where you get something for free, but not everything. So there are debates on that, and I'm sure there will be more and more debates on this, besides, so to speak, specialized services, i.e. whether there should be specialized types of services in future that could be allowed to have, in a way, priority through the network in order to be delivered in the right way. So I think this discussion will go on, and it will probably find its place on the agenda of net neutrality debate.
Vlada, it seems that there are no comments here in the room in Geneva. We have one comment here, please. Sana, you can also prepare a question.
Hi, this is William New at Intellectual Property Watch here in Geneva, and it's not going to be as technical a telecom question or technical question as a policy perspective to try to understand, in your view, looking into this year, first, what role do you see for the UN in these issues? Where is that debate taking place in the UN? Many of the things that you listed, for me, didn't really capture that, say, the ITU used to have quite a central role and a very useful and constructive role, I thought, in most people's eyes, independently viewing it. And now it seems that you can hardly mention their involvement in these issues to some degree. Not you, but I mean one. And another issue that used to come up in these contexts was protection of children online. That was quite well addressed, and it used to be a major issue just a couple of years ago. And it was something everybody could agree on. Is it already solved, or do we still? And a third one was the bigger question, which is still kind of floating around, and there's lip service paid to it, of digital divide. Have we resolved it, or is it a private sector question now? If there's a market to be had, then we'll let it get taken care of. Where do those issues come up?
We have another question. Nicola.
Yeah. Hello, thank you for the presentation. My name is Nikolai from Moldovan Mission. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there were a couple of stories in the history. One when it comes that the top of priorities become the security, a kind of security, it means that the process went too much liberalized. And then it means that some things has to be stopped or even increased in terms of seriosity or controlling. So I don't know, I'm looking at this 2013, 14 and 15 agenda, and I see that, like there were much more things happening in terms of cybersecurity in 2013 that could have pushed cybersecurity as a priority in 2014, but it was not happening. And now we see the cybersecurity at the top of that. And I was wondering, do you think, was those things really, really important that push it out and it's something natural or it's something wanted? And the second thing maybe is that, I mean, how much could we lose in terms of mismanaging cybersecurity this year?
So do you have any questions from online community?
A quick update on what's going on so far. So we have Joao from the Net Mundial Initiative Coordination Council asking the others about their opinion on the Net Mundial Initiative. And we have David from Africa who said they are still waiting for .Africa. And Nigel from ICANN would like to comment on the IANA transition, and maybe we can try to do a voice connection now, if we can.
Okay. Okay, we have then two questions from William and Nicola here in the room. Then we can. There is a lot of expertise in the room. Therefore, if you feel like commenting, please join us. And then there is the question of what we here in the room think about Net Mundial Initiative. This is the second point. And third is Nigel's comments on IANA. We expected Nigel to join us here in the room, but we will have him now on the voice. Shall we start with Nigel? Can he connect? Okay, well, you're trying to connect Nigel. I'm sure that many of us have the views on all the latest developments, including the Net Mundial Initiative. I would like to hear that we help Joao with the reflections on Net Mundial Initiative. And Richard, while we're waiting for Nigel, Richard, quick comment on, I guess, Net Mundial Initiative.
No, actually, I wanted to come back to what William said, which I thought was a very shrewd observation. If you go back to the report of the Working Group on Internet Governance of 2005, it identified 3 priority areas. The first was the asymmetric role of the U.S. government. The second was security, and the third was reducing the cost of connectivity in developing countries. The first 2 you see are all there, right? Cybersecurity, we have global internet architecture, IANA transition, privacy is still security. Net neutrality is about reducing costs basically inside the developed world only. So we seem to have dropped what was the main one, which was the development objective, which is how do we get the internet out to everybody. Now that's still there, and actually ISOC just published an excellent report on how IXPs help in that area. They took a case study of Rwanda and then generalized it. So maybe you should put that back up, or at least flag that there's a big problem here. Because the WSIS is supposed to be development, and we know we're building up the WSIS, and why is it that now we're entirely obsessed with the other 2 areas? And I think you hit it on the head, Nikolai. It's because now we're suddenly realizing, and sorry, I can't help but to now make my plug, the multi-stakeholder approach actually has not worked because the issues are still there. And now we're focusing on really basic problems which the multi-stakeholder model never addressed.
Can you have Nigel? Not yet. Okay. Okay. Please.
Hello.
We have update on IANA transition from. Okay.
I don't know if you can hear me, can you? Nigel, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I'm very sorry. Well, good afternoon, and sorry for not being there. Jovan, I had to be in the office, which is not that far away. We could throw a stone, so to speak. But just on the IANA transition, I just wanted to note that probably in February there won't be a proposal emerging because there's a timetable involved, and there's a group called the IANA Coordination Group, which some of you will have been following this will have known. And the IANA Coordination Group is taking proposals from the 3 constituency areas which IANA touches on, which is the naming area, i.e. changes to generic and country code names, the IP addressing community, the RARs, and what is in the IANA contract for them, and protocol parameters, primarily the IETF. And those 3 constituencies have to input to the IANA Coordination Group, and the naming community, which is probably the most sort of fundamental part of the IANA contract, are still deliberating on their proposals, and they probably won't be reporting on their proposals until midway or towards the end of February. So at the ICANN meeting in Singapore, there'll be obviously extensive discussions, but there won't be a composite proposal. So you won't see, if you like, white smoke coming out of the chimneys in Singapore. But thanks very much, and it's been a very interesting discussion.
Thank you, Nigel. How is it going to affect the timeline? Because in initial plan, there was the idea to have the first draft in Singapore. Is it going to affect the timeline, and can we expect some sort of delay beyond the 30th September because of the delay of introducing initial draft?
Well, of course, 30th of September remains in the timetable. There is some slack in the timetable, which allows discussions to take place a little longer. So, as long as the IANA Coordination Group come up with their sort of composite proposal in sort of March, April time, then that should give time for public consultation on it before it's transmitted to the NTIA in July time. So hopefully the timetable will be met. But it's more important, of course, to get this right and to ensure that there's full consultation with everyone.
Thank you, Nigel. We'll be following the developments in Singapore and the introduction of the draft. I would like now to return to the question by William, and we'll have another question. Question or comment?
It's a comment, actually, a clarification. My name is Hernan Vales. I'm from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And it's just a small clarification. I hope it's still important. The special rapporteurship that will or will not be established in March of this year is not on online privacy. It's on the right to privacy in general. And that's the way the General Assembly has decided it to be. It's important because it was part of the negotiation. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Can we expect? Can you give us some hints about the possibility of private interviews in the March meeting?
It's being discussed. I cannot. This is for states, especially the main sponsors of that topic, and no, I cannot give you. Thank you.
We have a comment here, David. A comment.
My name is Madeleine. I'm the founder of Health in Environment Program in Cameroon, also based in Geneva. We are working on the issues of World Information Society and ITU, and attending a lot of meetings. And I would like to know, how do you think that the process of the Internet governance can be involved strongly in Cameroon, for example, where I'm coming from? And how do you think that all the stakeholders can take part at this process, when we know that last services plus 10 was not taking really into account all of the recommendations of the civil societies in the process of Geneva plan? And second question is, I would like to know, IANA Transition, the presentation of the first draft, which will be held in Singapore, how do you think that the NGOs, academic, can be involved? Because I think this strategic meeting is very focused on the governments and ICANN. So I would like to know more about. Thank you.
Let me just start with the first question. And as far as I know, there is a Cameroon, there is National Internet Governance Forum in Cameroon, and in quite a few African countries. It probably is the best way to involve the different stakeholders and players on the national level. There are also sub-regional for Western Africa. There is African IGF. When it comes to IANA process. One of the features of IANA process was enormous effort of the organizers and conveyors to be as inclusive as it is possible. Therefore, there are wide consultations, quite intensive consultations with involvement of technical community and civil society. The process is very transparent, open, and it's possible to contribute. As we just heard from Nigel from ICANN, the first draft won't be presented during the Singapore meeting. It will be presented in March and April. And I think that ICANN also made a lot of efforts to simplify the access to the process, because there are different committees, acronyms, and one should applaud the overall efforts to make it as inclusive as it is possible. Now, the obvious barrier for inclusion is the complexity of the subject, many acronyms, technical issues, and that's the way how it is. Now, I will get back to the comment from William on the role of the United Nations and specialized agencies. I think that there was in certain phase, I would say, sometimes artificial concern about the importance of the involvement of the UN. UN can and should play important role as basically conveyor of the VERSIS process, and ITU as the lead agency in this field. And I would say that over the last, let's say, 12 months or 15 months, at least it's my sort of impression, there was more a reasonable discussion about involvement of different stakeholders, including IOs and different players. There is excellent cooperation between, for example, ITU and ICANN. ICANN established office in Geneva. Therefore, there are more and more convergences, and I think it is good news. Now, very concretely speaking, the specialized agencies can and should play a prominent role in covering specific aspects of the digital policy. Cybercrime is ultimately crime, and UNODC should play the role in addressing the cybercrime. And it is going to be one of the prominent issues at the next Crime Convention Summit in Doha in April. There will be the question of cybercrime addressed. We know the controversies, whether the Budapest Convention should be extended globally or should it be the new convention which is negotiated. There are the open issues. But ultimately, international, in particular specialized agencies like ITU, WIPO, WTO, Commission for Human Rights should basically develop further their policy area specialization in the online space. And it is happening. It is happening in the field of online privacy and right to privacy and e-commerce and WTO. Therefore, one can expect this relatively probably low visibility process of strengthening the role of the specialized agencies in this field. Your point on protection of children is well taken. We put it under the cybersecurity umbrella, although I think that it should be highlighted as one of the successes of public-private partnership in the field of internet governance. The question of digital divide, correct comments by both William Yu and Richard, it is covered by Sustainable Development Goals, but I think it should be highlighted as a special issue, especially related to the VERSIS focus on digital divide and development agenda. Well, Richard answered Nicola's question on cybersecurity, higher relevance of cybersecurity. I guess it is the consequence of general higher relevance of security in policy debates, and cyberspace is just affected by this general development. Roxana, with the comments online?
We have another question from Manuel Hases. Should the internet community locally support or not those zero rating plans offered currently by local ISPs, and which seem to become more and more common? So should the internet community support this?
Question for Vlada. Quick answer, Vlada, because now the time is a quite precious commodity for all of us, our guests here in Geneva and online. Could you just make your comment on this question?
Quick answer, yes, I think communities should discuss zero rating since these are the concerns for someone. So there are spaces like IGF and many others to discuss definitely an issue that seems a problem. A quick comment on Nicola's questions and Richard's response when it comes to cybersecurity. I think more and more we are seeing the risk of attacks on critical infrastructure. We have seen the attack on a steel factory in Germany, which caused physical damage in the factory. According to some news from Davos, Eugen Kaspersky has been caught around Davos by leaders of states and corporate sector exactly for this concern about critical infrastructure. I think it's getting mature now that we are going to have serious problems, and as Richard mentioned, not much of that has been resolved. So that is also why cybersecurity is coming high on the agenda. It's very practical and problematic. Thank you.
Thank you. Now with Vlada's comments, and one question which hasn't been answered, but I invite our guests here that you send our comments to our colleague from Brazil on the Net Mundial initiative and possible role of Net Mundial initiative in the broader internet governance framework as a support for the wider processes in this field. Well, I hope you found this briefing useful when it comes to a survey of internet governance issues. Thank you for your comments, to include the digital divide and development issues and other issues. And please join us for the next briefing, which briefings will be hosted every last Tuesday of the month in February. I don't know what is the exact date in February. We will be then focusing on developments in February, possible developments related to IANA Transition and the Singapore meeting, and the question of net neutrality, which is likely to dominate the policy discussion in February 2015. And we will prepare for the quite eventful spring, starting with the March developments, later on intensive agenda in April and May. Thank you very much for those of you who joined us here in Geneva. Big thanks to our online participants, Vlada, Roxana, Dejan, Teresa. Thank you.